All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, May 9th. This is the 2024. This is the regular SIG Network meeting. We are governed by the Code of Conduct, which basically boils down to don't be a jerk. So please don't be a jerk. And we'll get started. We have quite a number of things on the agenda today, actually. So we'll start with a little bit of triage, but maybe not too much. So let me go ahead and share screen. I want a window. It is, where's this window? What is this one? Yes. This one. Y'all see my screen okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Yep. All right, let's start newest first. Topology-aware routing not working. I took a quick read of this one. There's a lot of detail in here. It's not clear if this is working as intended but confusing the user because it's the hints logic, or if they're actually missing something. The error they got, where was it? Was no hints were provided for West 1C, but it does look like there's some hints.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, it looks like those warnings coming in May. Yeah, it's me. So I'll follow up.
Excellent. Actually, sorry, I should just assign.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Service spec external IPs. This is sort of a feature request. Lars answered a little bit, but with some of the concerns I was thinking about. Basically, they're saying they have a bunch of external IPs. They're sort of using external IPs to get node ports, sort of. They're giving node IPs or something like that. And they would like a CIDR on external IPs, which I don't think we want to do because external IPs is generally frowned upon as an API. But there was some other conversation here that I wasn't able to track leading up to this meeting. Lars or anybody?
Yeah, there is an extra twist. I believe the addresses he wants to assign are actually Kubernetes node addresses. And that is kind of over unplanned and untested territory when you have virtual addresses that are actually real addresses. It really is a disaster for IPVS because you actually assign those addresses to an interface.
Right.
Yeah. So every single node will answer these unless you have ARP suppressed. So it's a horror story for IPVS at least, and I believe it's not good for anyone.
Okay. Sounds fun. I'll take this one.
Yeah, you really made that one sound yummy.
I will try to let them down gently or come up with some other answer that maybe can give them what they're looking for. Long-lived TCP connections hang when behind a cluster IP. Antonio, go ahead.
Sorry, I've been trying to reproduce this one. The things Antonio are saying make sense, but I still couldn't reproduce it. I basically couldn't get a server that would shut down uncleanly. Anytime I deleted the pod, it would terminate connections as expected.
That's my experience too.
Okay.
Well, I should say what I have experienced was when you shut down the pod, maybe it was on the next packet that the other client would get a reset.
So in my case, I had a little Go web server, and with a long-lived HTTP connection, the client would either connect when TCP keep alive didn't happen, or when the pod shut down and closed the connection correctly.
Right.
So I don't think I could reproduce the exact problem that they're having. I assume what they're having is it's shutting down uncleanly and not closing connections, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Are they responding, Roadrunner? 3 weeks ago. Are you happy to keep pushing with this one, or do you want assist?
I think somebody else should take it. Or if somebody can hopefully point me in the direction of how to reproduce, I'm also happy. But I'm kind of just hitting my head against the wall at the moment. It's not really being useful.
I mean, when I tried to reproduce this in the past, I get what you described, which is TCP closes the connection.
Yeah. It's
Are you using a Go program? Because Go by default set TCP alive to 15 seconds, and that is
Yes.
very short compared to the default, which I believe is 2 hours or something like that.
I have tried to disable TCP keep alive. I've tried to catch SIGTERM and all the signals and not shut down cleanly, and I just haven't managed to do it properly. I think Antonio kind of hints on it, but maybe this problem isn't when a pod is cleanly shut down. Maybe the pod is, the node disappears or something. And that's kind of the problem we need to be focusing on, I think.
So if you just turned a node off with no clean shutdown.
Pull out the network cable, basically.
Yeah.
And then I think the idea is TCP reset or ICMP destination unreachable.
Well, you can't get a TCP reset because you're not getting any response from the remote node.
Yeah. So that's what Antonio says in that comment there in front of you.
Yeah. I mean, it's indistinguishable from a timeout, right? You don't know if the remote end is just being slow or if it's gone.
It feels like the server should shut down correctly, in which case, in this user case, I think it isn't. And it feels like the client should handle this correctly, in which case it sounds like it's not happening.
That's right.
You see the cloud provider they're using?
What's it? Metal something?
Never heard of it.
Equinix?
Equinix, yeah.
Or maybe I have heard of it.
They used to
data
be
center provider.
someone else.
Well, do they have a different name? That
Yeah.
I was testing on
Packet.net.
Oh, okay.
I was testing on latest Kubernetes and GKE, I think 1.29, with a little bit of web server and curl, and I don't know. I was trying to be as nasty as I could with timeouts and keep alive and stuff, and I just could not.
So one thing you could try if you think that it's the remote node going down hard would be establish the connection, like do some long-lived connection, and then on the remote node, just IP tables black hole. It's black hole yourself. Just or bring the interface down.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, turn the interface off. Literally, virtually unplug the network cable.
Yeah.
That machine will go away with no clean shutdown or anything. And if we see this, I guess the question is there anything that we can or should do about it, given that the client probably should be responsible for its own timeout?
Yeah. So I guess in the scenario you're describing, that's likely to be able to reproduce it doing that. So I don't know if it's worth reproducing, because in that situation, what do we do as Q-proxy?
Okay. Do you want to recap this conversation here, or I can do it after the call if you prefer?
Could you do it?
Sure.
You've got more experience. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, it's going to be a question, not an answer, right? What does the customer here think that we could do in this case? Sorry, was that Lars? Somebody else had something to say?
I was trying to say something.
Sorry,
but,
you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing, Adrian. I appreciate you putting in the effort, especially since you feel like you're banging your head against the wall. And thanks for
This is a
coming in
hard
and
one.
letting us know so we can support you. Don't want to leave you hanging. And appreciate what you've done, but at the same time, I feel like I would like to see Roadrunner tell us more about how to reproduce this in the environment they did. So like years ago, I remember when Azure was new, there were weird like TCP timeout things that would happen due to their network infrastructure and stuff like that. And I would hate for us to bang our heads too long on something that might literally only happen in this environment, and rather would see an environment where we could reproduce it real quick. I don't know. Even just asking, like, could you give us more details on exactly how to set up and reproduce this, even in that cloud provider? And can we get some free credits or something? Like, I think could be helpful.
So selfishly, I'm attempting to get involved, and I saw this as an opportunity to learn. So
Yeah,
for
no,
now,
for
I'm
sure.
more than happy to hit my head against the wall, even even if the user isn't providing much details. But
So-
I think I've hit the edge. I don't think I'll hit my head against the wall much further.
So Shane, that when they answered cloud provider, they were answering what cloud are you running this on, but it's bare metal. There's no actual Kubernetes cloud provider involved.
Understood. So it's
Right.
just the OS that they have, Ubuntu Noble Numbat. They're on development Ubuntu. Okay.
All right, I'll finish my answer later. All right, cool. Let's do. We're at 18 already. Let's just stop since we're already back to the more than a month and a half ago. We have lots of open issues that are still need triage. People, please take a look at your issues. If people are not responding, you give them one last ping like this, and if they can't come back to us with more information, we can go ahead and close. So please take a look at your assigned issues, or if you find you've got an hour and you don't know what to do, scan through the issues that are marked needs triage and see if you can either get more information, reproduce, prove that they're wrong, or suggest that we close. And I will go ahead and stop sharing. Next on our agenda is Mr. Winship talking about the annual report.
Yeah. So we're supposed to be working on this SIG annual report. It was due last week. We still have a work in progress PR for it. I started filling in some stuff. I think I may have to push an update to my existing PR because I did fix up all of the CAP information. But if there are big things that people think that we should mention in our SIG annual report, then we should go add comments there.
And for what it's worth, steering has tried to make the annual report process less and less painful. Ben keeps bending me that it's down to basically one question. So if people have things that they want to represent in that report, please take a look. Otherwise, let's get it in soon. That was easy. Dan, you are also next on the agenda for endpoints.
So there was some bug that we were dealing with, and several people who ought to know better made comments that implied that they thought that endpoints still got used in some circumstances. And so I'm thinking that maybe we need to, it's time to do something about the endpoints API and make it more deprecated than it currently is. And I don't know exactly what that would mean, but.
Yeah, I'll just one other bit of related content. We have a conformance test in Gateway API now that reads from custom endpoint slices. And that's problematic for some because some are still looking at endpoints this far in the future, right? So, and so if you're familiar, we have mirroring from custom endpoints to endpoint slices, but not the inverse of that. And custom endpoint slices don't get mirrored back. So that's another argument in favor of maybe we should just make it more clear that endpoint slices are the thing to use, and endpoints, well, maybe not being deprecated, have many limitations. I don't know how we do that, but
I feel like those gateway implementations should be considered non-conformant. Like if
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is super challenging because it's a part of a V1 API, and we have a pretty strong commitment to not getting rid of V1 APIs and not breaking people. So, like you said, there's absolutely people out there who are still looking at endpoints. In fact, it looks like kubectl still looks at endpoints, right? So we should fix that. We should fix all of our in-tree or in-family consumers to stop looking at endpoints. In terms of deprecating it, we can document it harder. We can make it optional flag or something to stop populating endpoints for services, but it has to be opt-in. It can't be something that we yank the rug out on people.
I was thinking, we could either API server warnings or automatically add an annotation to every endpoint saying, this is a deprecated API. You shouldn't be looking at this.
We could do, that's not terrible. Can we do API warnings on GET?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I mean, I guess the controller could add some annotation or whatever to the endpoints it creates, and then we could do a warning if you try to create your own endpoints, and that should cover both ones we make and ones that other people make, right?
That's true. Sure, putting a warning on create seems reasonable. If we could put a warning on get, that would also be interesting. Yeah, I'm okay with the idea of putting a little bit more caution tape around this API.
Yeah, so it seems like we need, I mean, the easiest thing is just on documentation itself, the Kubernetes website, is to try to more clearly document the limitations of endpoints API, and that the vast majority of things in Kubernetes are now reading from endpoint slice exclusively. Some things will get mirrored over to endpoint slice, but your best bet is just to use endpoint slice directly.
Yes. A blog post seems totally appropriate, or something that we could then amplify through all the social channels. Let's be careful about how we word this. We've taken a lot of flack for deprecations in the past, right? This is sort of a soft deprecation. It's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah,
but it has real limitations and is sort of the disfavored path. So there's a better option. People should switch to it at their earliest convenience.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, you can continue to use endpoints if you need, but you should at least be reading from endpoint slices, because that's going to be what the vast majority of things are consuming. And we can note that the mirroring exists. Yeah, no, I guess I should be the one to do that. Okay. Dan, maybe I'll follow up with you.
I do have a question for this kubectl thing. Do we have a bug? Like, is
it's
someone
linked,
actually working on it?
it's linked from the agenda. Damon has a PR to fix it. So
Excellent.
if you kubectl
it.
service, it lists the endpoints, not the endpoint slices that are associated with it.
Well,
Who is that?
To be fair, the kubectl get and kubectl describe only lists a couple of endpoints, right? So it doesn't need the entirety of endpoint slice. And endpoint slice is a much more complicated API to consume, right? Because you have to dedupe.
But in the case where a service has no endpoints and has only an endpoint slice,
you're right. You are correct. Do we have a helper library either in the client or somewhere that people could use that helps them consume endpoint slices, that does the dedupe logic?
there was already like code to deal with endpoint slices in kubectl. It just wasn't being used in this place. So,
I mean, in general, can we offer that to people when we're saying stop using endpoints, but endpoints is really easy, and use endpoint slice, which is a little bit more complicated. Here's some library to help you.
I don't think we do. Like, kubeproxy has some internally, but it's not really in a form that other people can easily use.
Where would such code live?
I have no idea. I mean, the client Client Go is an obvious place. There's a way to do extensions in Client Go, so you can add it. I think we could add a method to the endpoint slice object in the generated API, and we provide a manual definition of a couple of methods. I only know this because I broke it. I tried to break it rather. And now that I know it, I see it as maybe an opportunity here. Maybe.
But I think what we'd actually need here is you need kind of a collection of endpoint slices. So it's almost like you need something like on service that gets the. I'm not exactly sure what you need, but all the complexity of endpoint slices results in merging them together, not an individual endpoint slice.
Yeah, but the client, right? There's an endpoint slices object that has a get update.
Oh, it's a plural
method.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the collection object that.
Okay.
I don't know how much you've ever played with the client, but there's like a chain of collections. You specify the version and the resource. So there's a resource object, and I think you can define an endpoint slice extension, which defines new methods. So you could say like get deduped or something. I don't know what the API would look like, right? But maybe there's a way to inject a method there that does the deduplication for people. Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe we go and consider either a new repo or a new place where we would put API helper logic that isn't the client. That feels weird.
You don't want to put it directly into the client Go object though, because the tricky part is when you're watching for updates, right? And you need to like when a particular endpoint gets moved from one slice to another, that has to be dealt with across multiple events, right?
Yeah. So it would be nice if somebody looked at this because it is non-trivial. And if we're asking users to stop doing the easy thing and start doing the more complicated thing, we should give them a decent path to it. Who's going to take this? What's the plan? Do we write a small KEP that discusses the 6 things we could do to make it clear that this is a disfavored API?
At the very least, we need to check if you search on the web, should I use endpoints or endpoint slices? It should be very obvious at the top. And then also if you ask the LLM.
The latter one seems more complicated. But yeah, I can definitely take the communication side. I don't know about finding time to build the helper. That's maybe a bit more time than I have right now.
Okay. I'm just grabbing a couple of notes in the doc here. Can you guys help me flesh these out? It's on the beginning of the next page, whoever's cursor that is.
Yeah.
Okay. The notes are there. Please help fill them out.
Yeah.
Whoops. What did I just do? I just did something stupid. And sign up if you volunteer to do something to help here. Please put your name attached. All right. Next, Salt Lake City. Damon,
Don't think he's
are you
actually
here?
there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the question is plans for SIG update for KubeCon Salt Lake City. Who was driving that? There was a conversation I know, but I wasn't really in it.
I think the conversation was started by Damon asking about yeah, because he was like, oh, I want to present stuff at the next KubeCon, and so he was thinking that the SIG update could be one possibility for that. Has there even been a call for papers yet?
Yes.
Yeah, it's due in 3 weeks or something, right?
No.
But not the maintainer track.
Not the
Oh yeah,
maintainer
right.
track, yeah. So I mean, I'll be happy to just follow up with Damon and Slack or something and get him back on a call for when he can be here and talk with us about what he wants to do, or just send us like, this is what I'd like to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Like having multiple, new people leading the SIG updates is awesome and part of the the objective. So if he's volunteering, that's great. Okay. Next topic on the agenda then is Shane.
Yes. Some of you may have noticed that I wasn't around for the last couple of these meetings. After KubeCon Paris, there was kind of a critical time where I had no time. That is starting to ease up, and I am here. Look at me, yay. One of the things that I want to get back to doing that I didn't quite get done in time for KubeCon Paris is focusing on kind of making sub-project lead something that's official. For those of you who don't know or don't remember, a couple years ago, maybe a year or so ago, it was kind of pushed that we should start having official sub-project leads in all of the SIGs. And that basically for us maps to things like our maintainers of projects like the Gateway API and so forth. There was a document I wrote as like a proposal for what this would look like last year. It had really good feedback outside of the SIG, but a lot of negative feedback inside of the SIG. It was too heavy is basically the feedback that we got from inside of the SIG in terms of structure and process and stuff like that. So the next pass right now is looking like something we've talked about this as us leads have talked about sub-project leadership being something that in the first phase will be predominantly a recognition thing. Where I'm at right now mentally is I'm just going to start back up on this, go back to the previous doc, start a new doc where it would be predominantly a recognition thing. I do have in mind some thoughts about having a reporting structure to basically have like regular reports from sub-projects. But other than that, very lightweight. If anybody is interested in helping out with what sub-project leadership looks like in the long term or has thoughts or anything, please PM me. That was the point of putting this on here, just to let you know that I'll be working on this again, hopefully in time for Salt Lake. And I really want all the feedback that you can possibly give about it. So please send it to me.
And just a question about, I remember the sub-project discussion earlier as well, and thank you for leading it. What do you define as a sub-project? Maybe that's a better question, because I think of myself, like I could think of endpoint slice as a sub-project that I'm pretty familiar with.
Yep.
And obviously Gateway API is also a sub-project. I think technically a sub-project. Are both of those sub-projects?
It's open to interpretation,
okay.
But I would say Gateway API, multi-network, network policy, KNI, technically Ingress Nginx. These are all kind of what I had in mind. That's not an exhaustive list. We have a lot of sub-projects, if you will.
Yeah.
Depending on your thing of it. DNS in theory could be its own sub-project. However, it has been a little quiet in recent years.
I have no problems with a large proliferation of sub-projects. I mean, it's really, is there a technical area where someone or some people are demonstrating ownership of it? Like there are bugs that are related to DNS and there are fixes that are related to DNS, ergo DNS is a sub-project. There are bugs related to endpoint slice, ergo endpoints, or endpoint management is a sub-project. Not all sub-projects that we could enumerate have an obvious owner today, which is probably a warning sign. And probably not all things that have owners are sub-projects yet. Like I'm not sure if we want to declare sub-projects for unmerged areas, things that are effectively working groups right now. So multi-network is an interesting question. Like it's not actually officially a feature that we do really, although Multis kind of is, so maybe. It's worth a discussion. I don't have a problem. I'd rather err on the side of too many than too few, because I think the most valuable thing people can do is sort of show up and own a problem, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess I was trying to differentiate between, I know we've talked about like leads of areas, like kubeproxy seems like a really big one that I don't think there's technically recurring meetings for kubeproxy, but it's a hugely important. Sure. But I mean,
kind of.
Yeah, so it's just where you draw that line of like kubeproxy is a separate component. It has fairly clear ownership, but it doesn't have separate meetings right now.
I don't think we need to
no
impose meetings. I was one of the people who said it was the initial proposal was too heavy. Like I think it's valuable, even if it's just the starting point. It's valuable to say like kubeproxy is a sub-project, but also kubeproxy IPVS is a sub-project, and also kubeproxy IP tables is a sub-project, and also kubeproxy NF tables is a sub-project. And each of those areas have people who have demonstrated ownership, and those people should be recognized and celebrated and be ready to put those things on their, you know, what did you achieve this year performance reviews at their respective companies. If we later decide, hey, you know what, kubeproxy should have its own meetings and should have its own conformance tests, that's cool. We can do that. I think that's an independent decision.
Yes. I will try to not go anywhere near as heavy as the first pass, but try to provide some structure for what it is. Ultimately, I expect to have a decent definition of what a subproject is. It's going to be loose. We're going to have flexibility with that. Mostly be about recognition. And then my hope, and again, this is just what I'm hoping right now, and I want feedback. My hope is to have a little bit of the structure in that we would have a reporting structure for regular updates, even if those are not on this Zoom. And then that would be kind of the framework. And then obviously, like Adrian pointed out, it's out of date documentation on what a subproject is now. Like, as a part of this effort, update that and get all this stuff up to date so people can actually go see what really is going on, and can check the mailing list. What I'm hoping is in the future, what you'll be able to do is, as a subproject lead, you'll get recognized for that in a way that you can show your boss or whatever, put it on your blog, in a way that's, you know, codified somewhere. And then as a person who's not a subproject lead, you can go look at what the subprojects are and go look at the mailing list and say, what have they done in the last 3 months? What's going on in this subproject? That's the end result I'm hoping for by Salt Lake.
And importantly, I don't think the goal is to ask, I'll pick on you, Rob, since you're on my screen. It's not to ask you to do more work. It's to codify, you're already doing the work. If we have an endpoints problem, you're the first person I reach to, right? If I have a kubeproxy problem, Dan is the first person that we reach to. If we have an IPVS problem, Lars is the first person we reach to. We all know who these sub-project leads are, right? So recognizing it and just putting it in a document somewhere that says, yes, thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, like Tim said, the biggest piece of feedback that we got on the last proposal was it's too much. It's like basically adding a bunch of extra work for us. So we're very sensitive.
Yeah, I don't want to
and
disincent people.
Yeah, we are very sensitive to that with this next pass. Thank you all for your feedback on the first pass.
Cool. Excellent. Next on the agenda would be me. I wanted to maybe take a spin through the KEPs. I did spend a couple of hours yesterday going through them, checking on state and pinging things, but let's take a look at it. See if I can find which window I put that into. Here's the window. I'll share a window, tab. Here we go, share. Here's our current project board for SIG Network KEPs. Notice I have dropped the work in progress. This is where I am tracking in progress KEPs right now. I noticed there was one that had been added recently that wasn't on here, so I put it on. If you are looking at KEPs or writing KEPs, you can go ahead and either add it to this project, or let me know if you don't have permission and I'll add it to the project. Again, the goal here, I'm trying to keep this dashboard really simple so that it expresses like, where are we now and what's next, as opposed to having the full history of everything. The history is embedded in the feature gates and those sorts of things. I wanted to keep this simple. Please, people, if you look at this and it's not useful, let me know why, and we can talk about it. It's not immutable. So let's run through the KEPs that are in progress right now. I saw that somebody had added, Shane, you want to talk about KNI. So
Zappa isn't here, and also I can talk about it, but we could talk about the other one first.
Okay, we can always come back to it.
Yeah, we can come, if we have time, let's talk about KNI a little bit.
Okay, I added a column need SIG discussion. So this is like, the next time we meet, we should talk about it. So we'll clear these as we talk about them. Surya, are you here?
She's not, but I can talk about this.
Dan, you want to talk about this one?
So this came out of a bunch of different things. One, there's a known security problem with like liveness and readiness probes. And two, they sort of screw up network policy because we have to have special exceptions to network policy to make probes work. So this is a KEP about fixing all of those things, and we would like to get it in. at some point soon, because otherwise admin network policy is going to have the same hacks as regular network policy does, and we don't want that.
So I read over the KEP. I thought it was a great.
Thanks for that, because yeah, we needed input.
So I didn't even know it existed until I scanned for issues that were tagged SIG Network, but were not in the project. So I read it over, and it's a great KEP. I really enjoyed reading it. It was a good coverage of all of the problems that exist around probes today. I put a lot of feedback in there. I think the most important thing is to prioritize it. I don't think it's one KEP. I think it's actually like 4. We might keep it together in one KEP, but I suspect we're going to run into bumps with lifecycle management. Like some things may go alpha and beta and independently, and that'll be a little trickier to manage. But we can do it. It's fine. The real question is what's most important and what's being worked on in the near term. There were some that seemed really concrete. Like I think we understand how to move probes into the runtime. The question is I think we understand that we should probably move probes into the runtime and into the pods context. Not how though. So who's going to go prototype the how and cross-check that with SIG node in particular? Because if we're going to run it through the CRI API, then we should get a consult. But that seems totally reasonable. The network policy ones I'm less confident about, and we need to think about what those implications might be. And then there's API aspect of it, of course, which is always fun. But I do think it's well past time to start to tackle some of these issues. So I do appreciate it. So I'll look for updates and responses there. I thought this was a really good KEP. If anybody's interested in this, interested in new areas where they might participate, Adrian, I'm looking at you. This could be an opportunity to find some itches that need scratching.
Okay. Yeah, and if you find that you want to jump between things, not just Adrian, certainly Adrian, but anybody else, like please don't hesitate to just say on the issue, like, hey, I just can't, I'm stopping on this for now, just so we know, and then jump to something else. We don't want you to get burnt out.
Absolutely. Like there's no obligations. Everybody here is voluntarily. Okay, next, V1 Alpha 2 Cube Proxy. I guess Damon's not here, but I think we should figure out what this KEP is really about. Right now, the KEP is to introduce a V1 Alpha 2, which I don't think is actually the objective. I think the objective is finish the Cube Proxy component config, and we would then be on the Alpha lifecycle.
So,
go ahead.
So this started as come up with a V1 Alpha 2 config file to fix a bunch of problems and let us deprecate things we want to deprecate and change default values that we want to change to make things more secure. And then Damon realized there was already an ancient KEP that was sort of about this, so he just sort of took that over. So some of the like descriptions and stuff, may point in different directions, but the goal here is come up with a new config file version so that we can make things better.
I agree. So we should probably just retitle the KEP issue to something to that effect. And then it makes sense to say that it's in, I guess it's in alpha, not pre-alpha. It's in, oh no, right now as it's currently stated, it would be pre-alpha. Once it says be a Cube Proxy config, then it becomes alpha. And then we need to figure out what do we move to beta. Is that fair?
Yep.
Basically just a retitle. Okay, moving on. DNS search string validation. We got the KEP in order for 30, but it didn't make the code freeze. So I've gone ahead and pinged this one to see if they want to work on it in 31. Anybody questions or objections on that one? Okay, I'll take this off. Yes. Multi-siter. Antonio, are you here? You haven't said anything today.
He's also not here.
Yeah, I think he's at a conflict meeting. We had something internally.
I think he was planning to pick this up again for 131.
I think he was, but I want to make sure because I know he's also looking at some of the other. He's looking at many things right now. So this could be a place where maybe he could use help. I'm going to leave it as yes until I can
actually, I know we were talking about this yesterday. He wants to make it beta but disabled by default, indicating that the code is good quality, but all of the edge cases are not necessarily understood. And then he wanted to run it differently.
Okay. I'll have to think about that. Okay. NF tables, Dan, you already merged the code to move it to beta, so cool. Kube proxy version deprecation code to move it to beta merged yesterday. Cool. Traffic distribution for services. Gaurav or Rob, do you want to confirm?
Yeah, I don't think Gaurav is on this call, but yeah, we're definitely trying to get that to beta in this release. I think
we're targeting beta in 31. I'm going to go ahead and milestone it for 31. Whoops, what did I do? I lost my window. I'm lost. There. Oh, it's already milestone for 31. Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so we're shooting for beta in 31.
And maybe if we can skip over the other one just temporarily because it's closely related to 2433. Okay. I left a bit of an essay on that issue because you had asked what we want to do with this, and it's very tightly coupled with the traffic distribution cap. Topology or routing cap is one that introduced hints, the field, and I think that is something we want to keep and move forward with. And the behavior in kube proxy and whatever. I think the part that we probably want to deprecate in that cap is the annotation and rather confusing heuristic associated with it. So I think the cap still stays around. We just need to maybe make some deprecations or warnings that some functionality associated with the annotation is going to be removed in favor of the traffic distribution field. Does that seem fair?
What does that mean for, well, how should I update this lifecycle?
So we are making updates in 2433, but it's not changing. It's still going to be the same. It's just part of it will be deprecated and the rest of it will continue on to GA, hopefully, eventually. But in 131, no part of the like it's still staying in the phase it's in of beta, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Then I'm going to leave it GA TBD.
Yeah. Just as long as we know that we are trying to make some changes to it in 131 so it doesn't completely get lost. But yeah.
What would be the note we would add for 131? Give me a pithy statement.
Deprecating annotation in 131.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Let's go back to, oops, I just deleted the wrong one. Let's go back to load balancer IP mode. I talked with Ricardo. They're gonna wait one more cycle on this one to go to GA. So we did this. Kube proxy ingress reliability. I've gone to ping this Alexander. I don't know if you're here. Okay, I'll wait for the ping on the issue. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't go GA in 31, but we'll see. Other than, availability of hands on keyboards. And then there's a few that went GA in 30 that are scheduled for cleanup in 32, and one that was scheduled for cleanup in 31 that's actually already merged. So awesome. And that's where we are with KEPs. The actual list of open KEPs is dwindling, which is great. Gives us some bandwidth to open new ones as we engage with new fun issues and new fun people. I'm going to stop sharing. If you have a KEP that you think should be on this list and isn't, please let me know. There's a bunch that are tagged SIG Network but aren't really owned by us, like the reference grant stuff, which I didn't include here. Okay, we're 10 minutes short of the hour. Anybody else have agenda they want to talk about?
Rob does.
Robbie
I
added
added
one.
one last thing. Yeah, so 1.1 of Gateway API was released yesterday. A blog post should be going out sometime today. It was merged. I don't know when it actually goes out, but thank you to everyone who helped review and look at it. There were a few big announcements in this one, including gRPC route going to GA and service mesh support also being considered GA now. Also should mention that new things like session persistence and client cert verification on gateways have made it to experimental channel. So yeah, lots still going on in Gateway. Yeah, lots of momentum. Thanks to everyone who's been helping push this one through. I think we had, I don't know, 13 or 14 different people leading enhancements in this past release, which is awesome. And so, yeah, thanks to the community for making it happen.
Thanks for driving on it, Rob.
Of course.
Sub-project lead Rob.
Right.
Anybody else have agenda they want to talk about today?
We can talk about KNI next time.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh, there's a whole lot in the chat that I didn't see. Okay. If there's no other agenda, then I will adjourn and wish everybody a good rest of your Thursday. And we'll talk to you all in 2 weeks.
Cheers.
Thanks.